believe that we are going to have a chat with you, Dodge, get to know you a little bit more. You're often the man asking the question, and we're flipping that on its head, and I'm going to ask you some questions this evening. For you, what is the difference between hunting and shooting, and how do you define that?
And he gave me the gun, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, it had a Picatinny rail, and I was like, oh, do we just clip on a red dot sight? Or...
Yeah.
He said, oh, no, you just line up the barrel with the front.
Yeah.
I was like, are you joking? I'm like going to just side barrel a rhino?
Hey, Dodge. Welcome to your podcast, Accurate Hunts, A Life Outdoors. Good to have you here for a chat this evening.
Thank you for having me. Feels like I'm on that Ray Monroe TV show, is it? I don't know, The Life of Dodge or something. Can't remember his TV show he used to have.
Yeah.
That's right. What are we doing here tonight?
Well, I believe that we are going to have a chat with you, Dodge, get to know you a little bit more. You're often the man asking the questions, and we're flipping that on its head, and I'm going to ask you some questions this evening.
Yeah, well, backed by popular demand. I had a few people reach out and say, great interview you did with Cass, but
Yay.
And I think she'd, be good as a podcaster. And I thought, well, let's give her a shot. This is your interview.
Well, that's very lovely, and I'm absolutely happy to be here. It was a really nice experience coming on and having a chat with you. Been a really nice experience my whole sort of journey since the ABC story came out. So really happy to continue being involved in this space, and really excited to have a chat with you.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to it. On the ABC thing, just a little side note, I saw that Wally, his courses have booked out. From interest, which is great. Just random interest in these things, getting into the sport.
And none of it's surprising at all. This is a thing when you actually get to accurately represent the hunting community and what our way of life is all about. A lot of people are very curious to it, so it's really nice that there's actually been this platform to shine a light on the actual reality of hunting, and from that, people are having a closer look and getting involved. So. Yeah, really great outcomes.
I've always said that I think it's really important that we can articulate what we do well.
I think so.
When it's done properly, it comes across exactly the way you and I feel about it. So.
Exactly right. Yep. Nothing to do about it whatsoever.
Righto. Tonight's in your hands. I'll leave
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I can be that annoying guest that never shuts up and doesn't stop and let you talk. Or...
You do whatever you feel the need to do. Okay, this is your hour, Dodge. Okay, I mean,
tap
I have
the
some
table,
questions.
click my pen, rustle my ginger nut cookies.
Could you please? Yes, this is excellent. Try and throw me off. No, well, I do obviously have some topics I'd like to discuss with you because you're an interesting man and have undoubtedly had an interesting journey. There's a few highlights, I guess, that I've seen on your social media feeds that I've been particularly interested in. First of all, though, I know that part of your origin story for Accurate Hunts is that you were working as a guide. So you've been hunting yourself and working as a guide overseas, and then through that experience you had people approaching you, and rightly so, wanting your expertise back in Australia, and that's sort of part of the origin story for Accurate Hunts. And I have some more questions I'd like to circle back to later. But first, I would really like to know, what is your origin story? So did young Dodge grow up dreaming of hunting wild animals, or was there ever a time where that was something that was definitely not on the radar? How did you first know that you wanted to hunt, and what was your journey to your start?
Well, the first answer is no. I definitely never grew up thinking I'd be where I am now. I actually remember thinking, man, I want an inside job. My dad was a fencer. He grew up outdoors. He was a farmer, and we had a bit of acreage when we grew up. We rode horses and things, but even that became a bit of a chore later in life. It was a little bit hard to motivate myself. Just, I didn't really realize that I was a pretty lucky kid at that time to have access to those things. And now I'm a parent. I can see my kids, you're always trying to fight for their appreciation of things. But no, I came from a family of non-hunters. That's not from any particular hatred of the sport, just no introduction to it. My dad grew up on the farm. He had firearms growing up around him, but they were, in his words, just a tool like a shovel. So he would use it to dispatch a lamb that they'd then cut up and cook, or, you know, shoot a rabbit or shoot a fox or an injured horse or a cow. There was no, and it's something he brought up later. He said, I can't understand why you find joy in hunting. He said, I could never find any joy out of shooting things or, you know, the sport itself. But I think the industry back then was a lot different than what it is now too.
Yeah.
And he's not as extroverted as I am. But so my introduction to shooting came, I was 15 or so, and I was horse riding pretty competitively at the time, and staying with some friends out at Cowra every school holidays, cleaning up horse poop and painting their barn and riding horses and just having fun. But they had 300 or so acres, and he introduced me to firearms that way, and, you know, started off with shooting rabbits and moved up to bigger animals, and, you know, the occasional pig wandered through, but that was not something I'd ever pictured doing. And, you know, I'm sure my parents were aware that I was doing it, but it was never really discussed or, you know, I don't think Mum really enjoyed thinking about it. And then I think I was 19 or 20 when I finally got my firearms license, maybe 19 by myself. And I didn't tell anyone. And Dad's got a big shed at home, and I cleared a corner out, bolted a gun safe in, and then put mess back in front of it so he didn't see it. And I went and got my firearms license. And then I went to the Penrith Arms Show, which I've always, you know, I keep going back looking for the leg show, but it's always just the arms show. And they had this guy there selling, it was my first introduction to a gun show. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, that's a dinky little country show in comparison to what we can get. But I bought it's a Slazenger 22 made by Lithgow, and a 223, it was a Remington 700 223, and a double hammer shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun. I thought they were the coolest things ever. Turns out it's not, really hurts. But that was, and then it changed from there. But early on, I definitely didn't see that coming. I really had an enjoyment for just shooting things, shooting targets, shooting trees, and that sort of thing, shooting rabbits. And I had one mate in particular, Matty D, is probably listening. He just became my shooting buddy because he was into it, I was into it, and we spent every weekend we could, you know, shooting everything that we could. I don't know if I can't remember what I'm daydreaming now.
Yeah. No, your origin story. This is great. This is really nice insights.
Now I know what it feels like to be a
How quickly do you
guest
think it escalated for you from going out and shooting some rabbits? Yeah, tangents are great. So how quickly do you think it escalated from shooting some rabbits in a paddock to going after some really majestic big game, sort of more grand hunting pursuits?
I think I was 2.5 years into shooting, maybe having my firearms license, and I booked a trip to Africa. Yeah. So that was probably why I ended up on the path I'm on now on the trophy hunting side of things. And I cannot for the life of me remember why Africa. Like, was I reading magazines and I saw it? Was it, you know, some old Ben Unton stories in Sporting Shooter magazine or something? I really don't know where that come from. And
I think it's sorry.
No, you're right.
I was just going to say, I think it's quintessentially hunting and Africa. They go together. You know, I think a lot of people, if they don't understand what hunting is, they think hunting is going to going to Africa and shooting something over there. Whereas people don't always know what's available here, but
I'd seen a few movies and things, but I haven't, you know, I'm not a reader. I probably read magazines just for the pictures, but, you know, there's guys that used to write, you know, about hunting in Africa, and that was never on my radar. I've only got their books now, and I still don't read them. I just own the books. But I don't know what the allure was, but the way that worked out was I had tentatively booked a 10-day safari, and I didn't know anyone over there. It was purely just internet connections. And I went in very blind and very naive, and luckily I ended up with a good outfitter. But I booked a 10-day trip, and then my girlfriend at the time got wind because I hadn't told her. I was planning on taking her. And she ended up coming. We ended up making it a 20-day holiday with only 3 days hunting allowed.
Oh, no.
So it got pretty well.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, it got diminished. So that was a bit disappointing. But that was, I reckon, I went from, foxes. My first animal I shot with my own firearm was at Mum and Dad's place, and Mum not really wanting me to have firearms. A little bit extra backstory. At the time, I was actually doing leather work and leather tooling specifically, and I was sort of focusing on, I was doing a lot of bike seats for bikies, motorbike seats, custom leather seats.
Right.
And firstly, Mum's like, I don't want these bikies at our house. And then it was like, now you've got firearms here. What if the bikies come and rob you and steal your firearms and shoot you?
Oh, no.
I said, well, they wouldn't need to steal mine, Mum. They've probably got their own that they'd turn up with illegally. But, she was a little bit cautious of those things. And then some time passed, whether it be a month or two, and she says, Dodge, go and get your gun. There's a fox in the paddock. We had chickens at the time.
Yeah.
So I shot a fox in our back paddock.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time that she had asked me to, do something with this thing that I thought that it was a little bit taboo. So I reckon it was only about 2 or 3 years in total from shooting that fox with my own firearm to then going to Africa and shot a wildebeest, blue wildebeest, and 2 oryx, and that's all. And there's a horrible story at the end of that because they never got back. African taxidermy robbed me of those. So that's a deep and dark story and cost me a fortune.
Recreate that holiday.
I've been back.
Yeah.
I've been back since. It wasn't the outfitter's fault.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do now, so that I can organise these things for people and they don't get ripped off.
Yep, absolutely. Putting all that knowledge that you've acquired to good use. You mentioned before about how your dad shot animals but could never understand the allure of hunting. And I think it's one of those things as well where there's a common misconception that hunting and shooting are the same thing. Whereas, I guess everyone has a slightly different view on it. But shooting is pulling a trigger. Hunting, it involves all the rest of it, all your fair chase and the element of having to work for it. And, I don't judge anyone on their methods so long as it's legal. I'm all for it. And I think if you want to fill your freezer and that's all you want to do and you have private land you can access to do spotlighting, if that's how you're going to be proficient, go for it. But I think that a lot of hunters do really appreciate the fair chase element of it, the hunt itself. Is that something that I guess I'm sure resonates with you? But what is the difference between hunting and shooting, and how do you just define that?
I think that I used to think that we all start as shooters. We all start. I was very naive at the time. I had really good private land access. And come through the horse riding things. People own a horse, you have a farm. There's generally a large enough farm that you could shoot on. So those 2 things went hand in hand. So I had some good access. And I thought that my journey was standard. Get your firearms license, bring your dad's mate. Can I come to your farm and shoot some stuff? Okay. Turn up, shoot some stuff. And I didn't realise that wasn't common until later on. And I'll circle back to that. But when I first started shooting, that's all I wanted to do. Shoot every weekend, shoot, whether it be at the range, go and shoot bunnies, whatever. Some of the farmers had tags for kangaroos and things, and we'd jump on that. We did some home kills for one of the farmers, and it was just really fun. But I learnt a lot in that time frame, and I learnt that it wasn't that fun after a while. It became nearly a burden to go and do the bit of shooting for the farmer. Just he would say, "Oh, can you go and shoot this many roos for me, fill those tags, and this many rabbits, and then you can go and try and shoot some of your own stuff." But that became a bit of a burden. And then I didn't even really know that hunting was a thing that was different, like at that time. And it's not until you learn about hunting, and this comes from, I didn't grow up in a shooting or hunting family, so I don't have any passed down knowledge of these things. And Facebook wasn't much of a thing back then. Well, not in the hunting world either.
No.
So I think I progressed along, and I've roughly written this out as 6 stages of becoming a hunter. But it's like, if it's brown, it's down, working your way through to, trying to fill the freezer, and then being a little more specific and maybe, trophy hunting something and letting other things walk that you probably earlier stages would have shot, all the way through to hey, I've gone hunting. I didn't see anything, but still had a great time. I'm not at that point yet. I still like being successful and harvesting something. To me, a successful hunt is harvesting something. So the journey for me was probably very short in the shooting side of things, and then moved very quickly into the hunting side of things when I started guiding. And then it's been a long journey in the hunting end of that that spectrum. And I'm not there. And you say that you think shooting is, just pulling the trigger. I think people get stuck in the shooting stage, and that's great. That's fine. It's not for me. Yeah. And I think I found out recently, this is what I was circling back to, that people have started at the other end, and I want to focus on the R license system where they don't know shooting. They only know hunting, because that's all you can do in a state forest. You can't sight your gun in. You can't go and blast everything you see because you scare everything away. And then you don't see that much. So I didn't realize that world existed and that it was hard to get private access until really I started the other podcast I was on, Endless Pursuit. But now I can't even remember what your question was. I'm too far down the rabbit hole.
Your perception of the difference, I guess, between hunting and shooting, which I think you covered off really well.
I don't have any negative perception of any of those steps. I think that there's a lot of skills that are missed if you start at the hunting end and not at the shooting end. And I think that it really pays dividends for people that start in the hunting end to circle back or pick a mentor or do something, but get back to some firearm fundamentals.
Yeah.
And that's being able to shoot in all positions. Go and shoot a 22 1,000 times, and that'll help you shoot your 308 tenfold.
Yeah.
You just need to do muscle memory, because I've met people recently that have been hunting for 5 years, never shot an animal yet.
Yeah.
What? I would lose interest so quickly.
Not had an option to have a shot, or or
public land hunters in New South Wales.
Yeah.
Our forests are probably a little bit more densely populated with humanoids than yours, and the ones close to Sydney anyway.
Yeah.
And for those that are newish to it, I want to say less densely populated with animals. I mean, there's areas where they can be more successful, but they haven't found them yet. But I think it really pays dividends to circle back to some of the original shooting skills that helped me become a better hunter, because they're focused on their hunting skills. And this happened, you and I spoke about it the other week, but there was a guy on a recent local club hunt that shot a sambar his first time, but he didn't know what to do with it after he shot it, because all his training had been about what to find, how to find it. Yeah. And then he's like, now I've shot it, what do I do? And that's some of the fundamentals that people miss out on.
Oh, absolutely. And I think all of it's important, because you need to know the whole process, and being accurate with your shooting, that's part of your proficiency. So you don't want to ignore that part. But I think it's just the point of, hunting's about more than just the shooting. But that is a very important part. If you're wanting to do it ethically, then you absolutely need to spend the time to hone your skills there.
There's so many skills I haven't developed in the shooting side of it either. Like, I've got mates that are right into their reloading, zero interest. I got mates that are right into long range shooting, a little bit of interest, but I've got no, skill set for it. So, or no need for it right now. So there's definitely lots of factors in each step.
Yeah. No, that's good. Thank you. You've answered that question wonderfully. So I'll circle back around so I now know your origin story as a person, as a hunter. And so out of the work that you were doing, guiding for another business, you at some point decided to start Accurate Hunts. What was that like for you, going from working for someone else to realising, by popular demand, people seeking your services, actually realising that could be a viable option for you? And that sort of journey between going from an employee to a business owner, and this is something that you've built a skill set up and have been able to actually make that a viable business option for yourself.
It's definitely not an easy industry to be in. I don't think it was probably until my third trip overseas that I really realised that like hunting's something I could really enjoy here.
Mm.
I had a really bad habit. I'm going to call it like undiagnosed ADHD, but of starting hobbies, leather work, one of them.
Yep.
Buying all the gear, the top-notch gear, and she's like, I'm going to love this from, and then 3 months later you move on to the next one and everything gets put in a corner.
Yeah.
And my family thought hunting was that to me.
Yeah, right.
And
yep.
I remember my brother being surprised, like saying to me, I'm surprised you've really stuck with this.
Mm.
And I never thought I could turn it into a business. But the first client that probably stemmed that along for me has actually just come full circle and been with me in Australia with his wife, and it's Ted and Rhonda. And Ted made a cameo in one of my other episodes when I was up in Darwin. He jumped in the background there while we were chatting. And I just had a really good time with them. And towards the end of the hunt, I said to them, what's next for you guys? These guys like to travel and hunt. And they said, well, what are you doing next year? We want to do what you're doing next year. And I was like, that's nice. So, and then I went back to Canada. Sorry, that was just Ted by himself the first year. And then the next year he brought Rhonda with him, had a really good time with me. And then he said to the outfitter who I was working for in Canada, we want to come back. We want Dodge. And we want to go back, into that area and want to complete, because we didn't shoot a moose on his first trip. He shot this mountain goat, but no moose. We saw some good ones, but not quite legal. And then he wanted to complete that journey. So he brought his wife with him, and we just had a really good time. That trip alone was special for different reasons, but it really set in my mind that this is something I want to do going forward.
Mm.
And that's where it started. I mean, Accurate Hunts, I think I technically registered the business name prior to that, but it was more I just needed an ABN for what I was doing in Canada, and I had to call it something. So that's what I did. But it wasn't until then that I realized that, hey, these guys actually want to follow me around, or, interested in what I've got to say or learn or to teach, sorry. And I only just admitted to Rhonda in this last trip that her husband's moose was, I think, the first moose I'd ever actually seen in person.
Wow.
The prior year. And
yeah.
It was, she was pretty shocked by that. She's like, we didn't know that you were so green. You didn't show any of that.
Yeah.
Any of that at all.
Fake it till you make it.
And apparently I made it, and it worked. We ended up shooting one of the biggest moose we'd pulled off that whole concession.
Yeah.
But
amazing.
That cemented it for me. And then coming home, I mean, there's not a lot of Australian hunters that really want to, in comparison to how many hunters there are, go overseas like that. That's in the pointy end of the hunting spectrum.
Mm.
Whereas I think the majority of Australia's over here in the shooting, lower end hunting. I don't mean lower in quality. I just mean lower in quantity of people.
Yeah.
So the booking agency side of things it's a little market. Well, it was then. It's grown a little bit now with social media and accessibility and pricing. But I don't know why I got myself into a niche market. But it did. I did, and it worked okay. One of my strengths is talking. Believe it or not, I don't shut up that often. So one thing I was really interested in was just meeting more people in the industry, and it's definitely helped me do that. And one of my strong points is my good connections with people in the industry, and that's shown with, the good array of guests I get on here. I know a lot of them, or I know of a lot of them, and they might know of me and trust me enough to take the plunge and come and do an episode.
Yeah, and that's very evident as well in your interactions that you've had even within the Australian Hunters Club when you've come along there, and the trivia that you prepared. It's pretty evident that you invest in your network. So not surprising at all that you've been able to build some relationships with other hunters. On your website, you mentioned that a shared experience has the ability to enhance each person's individual experience, which I wholeheartedly agree. Can you think of a time where, or do you have, I guess, a favourite moment that you could reflect on, or a particular client that had an experience? I mean, you could quite literally be giving them an experience of a lifetime. Are there any that come to memory for you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's lots. There's some really good funny ones. There's a couple of emotional ones. I think one of the ones that surprised me the most was, it's my now wife, but at the time, I don't normally talk this much. I usually just listen. My wife's family had a property. It was 4,000 acres, and we were just dating at the time. I don't even think we were. I think it was pre-dating, like just when you're hanging out. And we were at the Sydney Royal, and she said, "Oh, my parents are like, we're going to go out to the farm." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You don't even know what I'm going to ask." I said, "You're going to ask if we're going to go out there on Easter weekend." And I said, "Yes, we are." And that's what happened. That was the first time really meeting all the family. I'd met her parents and things, but this was a really cool property where it was just a super communal gathering point of all cousins and long lost cousins and relatives that weren't cousins would come and holiday at this farm. And it had a lot of history for them, and they grew up there and had a great time. And there was word that there was deer on the property. So that interests me greatly. And I said yes, and then we organised and we went. And it was the night, so we'd been there, we got there late one night. The night before we were to go hunting, as I would call it. They are traditionally shooters. They are not hunters. She has a firearms license, but she grew up shooting pigs and rabbits and things on this property. There was a lot of pigs. This was during the drought. And the occasional deer had been seen, but not harvested. And I said, "All right, we're going to get up at 5 and we're going to head out before sunup." And her uncle was there, and he said, "What for?" And I said, "Well, I want to be where we think these deer might be." There was a crop planted in one of the back paddocks, and I said, "I want to be in that paddock at sunup." And it was a fair hike. So her and it was my wife, Melissa, her friend, and her brother came with. And we left early. We got to the paddock, and there was like 25 pigs. And I had never shot pigs. I was so excited. I was like, "That's pigs." I had an open sight 308 Spanish Mauser that I just uselessly bought off used guns when I was sitting in Canada and wanted to have fun with. And I was so excited to shoot these pigs. And like, we were lined up. There was 3 of us with firearms licenses. Her brother didn't have one, and he was on the binos. And we were lined up on these pigs, and we were waiting for them to feed in front of us. And I stupidly looked over my shoulder. And I come back and I was like, "Oh, hold on, you saw something." And I look back, and there's a ginormous fallow buck in the middle of the field. This was Easter, so rut time. Yeah. And he was walking slowly, he was so tired from his night of rutting, which I didn't fully understand at the time. And he was, just browsing along. And I was like, oh, I was disappointed because I wanted to shoot the pigs, but I couldn't let that go. It was a big buck. So I left her brother and a friend there, and we made a beeline across the paddock to this deer. There was one tree between us and the deer was walking, so we had to keep moving as well to keep this tree in line with us, so we couldn't see it. Anyway, it turned out he had no idea we were there. She gets to the tree and she shoots this ginormous fallow at 100 yards or something. Sorry, I got a cough again. I need a drink of water. And I knew what she'd shot because I'd shot some deer and seen some and things. She knew she shot a deer, but she didn't understand, and I don't think she fully understood until 2 or 3 years later when we tried to chase more fallow with her, how good of a fallow she shot.
Yeah. Yep.
It was not a representative. It was a really good trophy one. It had a cleft palm, which doesn't need to be explained right now, but so some people would see it as a cull, but it was a ginormous one with this cleft palm, really thick mass. And I was exuberant. I was just, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm not that sort of person. I don't get that so excited. And I was jumping and high-fiving and hugging, and I don't think I was trying to kiss her at the time. I don't think we're at that point yet. But she told me later, she's like, what's this guy doing so excited about shooting a damn deer? What is this? And that, to be there for her initial first experience of that was pretty fun. It was very fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it made her uncle pretty cranky because
Yeah.
I caped this thing out. It's mounted on the wall in there now. She calls it Mac Daddy. And we name most of the animals in the trophy room.
Yeah.
So Big Mac's mounted in the...
That's cool. As in you give them names.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
nicknames.
Yeah.
So he's mounted in there, and the kids know their names. But he said, "Oh, that's my deer." But what do you mean it's your deer? He said, "Well, I think I saw that one last year, and I was going to go out and shoot it this year." I said, "What?" Like, we were back before they finished bacon and eggs.
Yeah.
And they were going to go out after that. So I think they were definitely in the shooting side of things, and they'd shot more pigs than I ever have and ever will probably. But it was really fun to do that with her, and then see it a few years later when she realised that,
yes,
like, that is really a good one.
Yeah. And how nice that it was her that you had that experience with, that you can now share this story and like have that shared moment. Now, you did mention this is when you were just in the hanging out phase, but it was like, I'm guessing there was some romantic interest there.
Hopefully.
Did you were you already in the stage of just hoping that this was going to be forever, and you're like, yes, this is a beautiful moment that we're sharing together?
No, probably not. It was the 4,000 acres that really got me over the line, I think. No, I can't. I haven't been out of fire. I wrote in a diary. So we were, that was April. So we didn't, technically become a couple until like June or July it was, that we wrote down on paper that we were technically together. Facebook official, I think it was.
Oh,
and then
that's what seals the deal.
That's it. And then there was a SHOT Show in Sydney in June, and then in July, and then we got together in June. In July, I left to go to Darwin for 4 weeks, and then I was back for 2 weeks, and then I was gone for 4 months. And so we had been together 6 months, and I'd seen her 6 weeks of those 6 months.
There you go.
And I like to remind her of that now when she complains when I go away for one weekend. But
we've done worse.
Yeah, we've definitely done worse. That was obviously pre-kids and lots of other complications in life. But it was, it was a fun time in my life to have her share that. And then
beautiful. She
actually surprised me in that trip. Again, things you can do without kids and home loans. But she organised with the people I was staying with just to turn up in Texas. So
wow.
I didn't know until the day she was landing that she was coming to Texas, I think.
How good is that?
I was there for 2 weeks, and she flew over for 10 days, I think, of the 2 weeks, or 7 days. Just had a good time with the people we were staying with.
Beautiful. That's really nice. I like that story. It is good. Another thing that you make mention on your website on Accurate Hunts is about how your years of field experience help you to know what should and shouldn't happen, I guess, when you're an outfitter, what you should expect when you're going on a guided hunt. Do you have any examples you can think of experiences other people have had that you've heard of, horror stories, I guess, or things that have just, because I think when you're a rookie hunter, you show up and you don't know what to expect. So it's absolutely possible that some weird and wonderful and wild things could happen that if you didn't know better, you'd be like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Do you have any stories like that you can share?
Yes. Yeah, one comes straight to mind. And there's two things. There's one story, and then there's a analogy that I'll get into if I remember it. Remind me of that. And it wasn't anyone. It was my first booked client for Accurate Hunts. And it came through the gun shop at Horsley Park gun shop. I knew a guy who worked there, and he said someone had come in looking for a chital hunt for him and his dad. And I gave them your details. And these people rang. His name was Wes. I remember that because I still work for him now, fencing-wise, and it's come full circle, and I'll end with that. But he booked a chital hunt for himself and his father. Now, in the early days of Accurate Hunts, I was new in business and relied on people that I probably didn't know that well so I would organise the hunt, give you the details and everything, take the money, pay the guide, organise the trip, you would go away, fly away, do the trip, and then come back, let me know how it was, and we'd make a percentage. That's how the booking agency works. So that happened, and it was a 7-day cheetle hunt for himself and his father up in North Queensland. And it doesn't matter if I mention the guy's name or not, because he's no longer in business, because this is pretty much exactly how his business went for everyone. But I made the rookie mistake of not going to the property prior, and it's now something that I do. Basically, any hunt you book with Accurate Hunts, I've been on.
Okay.
You go to Africa, I've been there. You want to go to Canada, I've been there. New Zealand, I've been there. I've been to the kitchen, I've been to the toilets. I know what it's all like. I can tell you every detail, and that's on purpose. It cost me money, definitely, to
Good
do that. But this trip is the reason why. So they flew up there. He picked him up from the airport. Their car broke down halfway out to the property. So, which, whatever. Cars are cars. And they finally got out to the property after doing some bush mechanics and getting it through. The farmer had forgot they were coming and left the gate locked. And this guy didn't have a key, so they had to cut the lock. Would seem like a first red flag. Then they went in and they saw some deer on the way in and things, females, does, and they set up and they sighted their rifles in and got ready. And then they went out on the trip, and all they were seeing was females, and it was, supposed to be shooting stags, and that's fine. It's hunting, and not always around. And there just wasn't many of them either. So they went for, I think, 4.5 days and didn't shoot anything, or 4 days. And on the 5th day, they saw a small little antlered animal. And the guide said, no, don't shoot it. We'll see something bigger. And then they saw some wild dogs. They shot the wild dogs. It's fine. You can do that in private property in North Queensland. Then they could only find one after they shot at 2 of them. And they walked up on it, and it was a puppy with a collar on.
Oh, no.
This was the farmer's dog.
Oh, no.
So they had to walk to the farmer's house with this dog in his hand. And anyway, they got kicked off the property instantly. And the guide was never allowed back. So they went to another property, and they just never saw any, shooting stags. And they were pretty wrecked emotionally after that situation. The clients were Wes and his dad. And that was just horrific. The whole trip was pretty terrible. The food was terrible. The guiding was terrible. The animals were terrible. The car was terrible. The lodging was terrible. The lack of animals was terrible. And then they shoot a puppy.
Far out.
It had everything going poorly for it. So he gets home.
Oh, there's more.
And I ring him. Hey, Wes, welcome back to work. How was your trip? And he lays it all out for me. And I said, mate, give me your bank details. I'm giving you all your money back. Like, that is horrible.
Yeah.
I felt so bad. So I gave him his complete money back, which I didn't have to give at the time. Like, I had money, but I had taken my small percentage and paid the guide. And then I had paid him the full amount of the trip back because, bad reviews are worth more than good ones, sort of thing. I didn't want to annoy my first proper customer. And then I chased the guide, and he was, I can't afford to pay you back and all this sort of thing. And anyway, he ended up dropping off the radar and going a bit crazy. But it has turned full circle where Wes actually has now moved close to me down in the Highlands. He owns 500 and something acres with Chittle running over it all the time.
Amazing.
And he actually didn't shoot any animals for some years after the traumatizing effect of shooting that dog.
Oh, that was
he sort of gave up hunting and shooting. Yeah. And him and I talk reasonably regularly. I've done some fencing for him, and he's sort of come back to shooting the deer, but it's not. His wife said it really affected him for some years.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So that's a pretty horrible horror story.
That is a horror story, and
I can't shy away from the fact that it happened under my banner. Like, it was my first client, but it really taught me a lot, but it's just cemented the fact that, hey, if you want to do this, you'll do it properly, and that means you got to go and visit these places. You've got to meet the people, see the outfit, make sure the farmer is actually letting them on
Yes.
legally. And yeah, it was just a mess.
Yeah.
It was a mess.
Goodness me.
But it made me want to do it properly. And here we are.
Yeah, and absolutely, like learning opportunity.
Try to.
Good way to, I guess, recover from that. I want to talk to you about your rhino green hunt. Now, green hunt was a term that I didn't know about until seeing your experience there, which for anyone listening that's unaware, that's where you do the hunt, you stalk the animal and shoot with a non-lethal tranquilizer dart. Is that right? That's yeah. Mm-hmm. And I know that you participated in that so that the rhino could receive an examination and medical care. Can you tell us more about that hunt? Because I imagine there's a lot involved there. And then I'd also like to know about the program itself, because I understand you have an ongoing involvement or interest in the program there.
Right. So you ruined it by saying green hunt. I usually just say that I shot a rhino last year and then wait for people's jaw to come up off
Rewind.
the ground.
Whoops, sorry.
So there's a few things happening in that hunt. One of them was that I'm not afraid to stir people, and shooting a rhino is pretty up there with stirring people, especially when you don't really tell the green hunt part of the story. So I don't know. Before I went over, the offer was there from the outfitter, and I never really considered it. And it wasn't until we sort of got there, and it was like day one. He's like, "All right, we're going to shoot a rhino today." I was like, "Okay, righto, it's happening. Here we go." And I would shoot a rhino legally, like proper dead shoot, if I could afford it. But the finances range from 50, I want to say 30,000 US up to 400,000 or 500,000 US, depending on what you're targeting.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you can do it quite cheaply, but what you're shooting on the cheaper end is a captive bred rhino who is past breeding date, been released, and then you harvest that. There's no difference to shooting basically anything else in South Africa, except the cost. On the green hunt side of things, this property had set up a breeding program, and this was their first female rhino that they had purchased, and they had purchased her under the assumption that she was pregnant, but they weren't sure, and I think they're pregnant for like 2 years or something. I can't remember the details on it, but it's a long time. And I was the first person that was there in the right time frame that sort of lined up with when they needed to check how she was progressing in the pregnancy. So they offered me this option to do the hunt. I said, great. What a great way to stir people back home, is basically what I thought.
Yeah.
So the vet turns up, and the vet's a really nice guy, old South African fella, who probably green hunts 100 rhino a month. Like, to him, it's just normal. It's just part of business. And he turned up with this, I was too caught up in the moment. I never really documented what rifle it was, but it was a break action 22 that shot blanks. So I wasn't shooting a round. It was just using that to propel what I would like to describe as my thumb. Basically, it was a dart. It's in the other room. It'll take me too long to go and get it. I brought it home with me. Don't tell customs. It was probably 150 mil long in total, the thickness of maybe my index finger, and then just with a flat orange cap on the end that was loaded. So they would inject the stuff down in through the needle, and the needle's probably, let's say, 5 mil wide, so quite a very thick needle.
Yeah.
And maybe 80 mil long, 8 centimeters long or so, with a little barb on the back of it. And they would inject the serum into that and then load it into the gun. The 22 cartridge would go off and the gas would go, and then push the dart out the gun. Now, I think it has the aerodynamics of a brick, is probably a fair way to describe that. It was horrible. And he gave me the gun, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, it had a Picatinny rail, and I was like, oh, do we just clip on a red dot sight? Or?
Yeah.
He said, oh, no, you just line up the barrel with the front.
Yeah.
I was like, are you joking? I'm like going to just side barrel a rhino? What? Like, anyway, whatever. So we walked down next to the house, next to the lodge, and we had a archery target set up 30 meters away. And the way you dialed the strength on this thing was like, it had a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, meaning 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So it just provided the strength that you needed. I don't really know how that worked. But he put it on 30 because we're at 30 from this target. And I hold it up and he said, just, normally a gun with open sights would have a sight at the front and then one at the back that you would line up. This had a sight at the front and then a Picatinny rail, which is designed to have something put on it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking down it and I shot the target and it hit dead center. And he said, absolutely brilliant. I didn't have the heart to tell him that's not where I was aiming.
Oh, bless.
I was aiming at the target above it. So I shot substantially, like, 400 mil low.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we did it again and I adjusted in my eyes. I was like, okay, well, I've got to hold a bit higher. Anyway, it went pretty much right next to the other one. He said, brilliant, let's go shoot a rhino. And I was like, oh, like that's nowhere near I was aiming. I don't have the heart to tell him.
Oh.
We jumped.
A rhino's pretty big though, right? Like
yeah, like the size of a V-dub. But
yeah.
In saying that, he said, I have to, so they have a hump, a bit like a Brahman bull, but further up on their neck. And that's where I had to hit it.
Okay.
Nowhere else.
Why is that? Does that intake the
so it's like a camel's hump.
Solution quicker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could hit them in the side and you could actually puncture into their guts and things. Or if it's in the back, in their rump, their muscles are quite tight and it takes longer. So he said that's a softer muscle and a fattier spot. And it was the magic spot. So we jumped on the bucky, which is South African for ute, basically.
Mm.
And it was all hands on deck. I think we had 4 vehicles going, and I think there was about 4 people in each vehicle. We were all driving all over the property to find her. No one had any idea where she was.
Yeah.
Something like 11 or 12,000 acres. And it was probably an hour or two, probably 2 hours later. We drove past and we saw her, and all we did, we kept driving, but someone threw a rag off the back onto the track and we kept driving because we didn't really want to spook her. Mm. And then we got on the radio and everyone ascended on, a spot just down the road. And we made a plan and we went back to where the rag was and she was gone. Nowhere to be seen. Mm. But we hopped off there. Excuse me. I hate when guests cough all the time. We hopped off the bucky and I had a cameraman with me and he put up a drone and we flew around it was a full battery, so 15 or 20 minutes, but we found her probably 800 yards away from us. And so he flew the drone back, changed the battery over, sent it back out, put it over her and just left it there. And then it was the weirdest hunting experience because I was hunting the drone. At that point, we were just using the drone as a marker and we were hunting in on that. And there's other animals, zebra and oryx and things flushing out of places. And that was weird too. But we finally got to a point where we could see the drone and we could just kind of make out her 100 yards away. They've actually got really small eyes and pretty horrible eyesight. So that worked to our advantage. I ended up getting to I think it was about 18 meters.
Right. Yeah.
From her, and she was broadside with a bush covering her whole body and her head except the hump.
Oh, how good.
It's perfect. And there's this drone footage from above.
Yeah.
And I also had the cameraman behind me filming. And I just shot this thing and I just watched this bright orange butt of the dart just spiral through the air. It's like when you throw it
like a cartoon.
Yeah, like when you throw a dart like at a dartboard, but when you're a kid you throw them sideways for fun and then they straighten out and they wobble all the way around.
Yeah,
it's exactly what this did. Anyway, it hit exactly where it needed to. Brilliant shot. Amazing. He says. And I thought, all right, that's it, it's done, we're done. And she sort of spun around and didn't really know what happened, and then she jogged off. And I was sort of dawdling around getting stuff ready. He goes, run, run. Oh, okay. I'm not real good at running at the best of times. So we jogged after this thing, and then we lost her.
Oh no.
No one could find her.
Do they
So
not put trackers on them? Like,
you'd think that would be the smart idea. So
you
they
would
split
think
up.
so.
We split up with vehicles again, and one of the guys crossed her, like she crossed the track in front of him. So he got on the radio, and we all got up there. And in the background, my guide was getting pretty nervous. And I reckon 15 minutes had passed at this point. And it was about 20 minutes before she finally laid down. But at that point, the vet was following her and grabbing her tail. Like, she was pretty docile and just stumbling and walking and whatnot. And at the end, he actually just like pulled her tail and she sat down, fell over. And it wasn't until later on, after we were doing all the vet stuff, that I kind of asked my guide, I was like, what's wrong? Like, what am I missing here? You're a bit weird about this. And he said, it's the first time we've used this vet. And he said, that usually takes 3 minutes to knock them out.
Oh.
And he said, that took nearly 30.
So the dose just wasn't enough? Or?
Well, so we asked the vet, and he said, oh, no. He said, I do this all the time, and I use that dose all the time. He used a different concoction because when you say, it was funny at the start, you said green hunt, like non-lethal. If you shoot one with the other green hunt, the other green dart that takes 3 minutes to kick in, and you lose them, there's a 98% chance they won't wake up.
Right, so they need to be revived on that.
It's an antidote.
Gotcha.
Whereas this one, there's a 98% chance, takes a lot longer to enact, but there's a 98% chance if you never find them, they will get up and run away eventually.
And when you got, 1,200 acres, did you say? Like,
no, more, 12,000.
12,000. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you can find them.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then, to have them.
Well, that's when you get the helicopter. But, so that, anyway, that's what the nervous was. And my guy was fine after that. He didn't discuss that sort of drug detail earlier. So then she dropped, and we got the longest ultrasound out I've ever seen. It was a bit of like basically a pool extender pipe, because the giant uterus went in there and ultrasounded, and turns out she had a baby. So she was pregnant.
Excellent.
And that was very exciting to be a part of, because the owner of the property and my guide are business partners in the rhino purchase. And, it was the first time for them to see that, and they were pretty exuberant and whatnot. Yeah. And then on the bottom of her horn, when you, you cut your fingernail back or something, but a little thread goes up the fingernail, and just a tiny little frayed section. There was a heap of those on the front of her horn.
Okay. From
rubbing bushes and things. It just threads off. And the guide cut a heap off. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'll show you later. Anyway, gave her the antidote, and she jumped up. Well, he said, I'm going to give her the antidote now. Everyone move back. And then he looked back and he said, move back. Like, he was serious.
Yeah.
And he gave her the antidote, and she was up in seconds, like 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And she stood up, took 2 steps away from us, and then turned straight at us and came towards us. She was not happy that we, pinned her to the ground and took photos for half an hour. But that's how that went down. And then we got back to camp later on. I'd forgotten about the little things he took off her horn, and he put them in a shot glass with Jaeger. And a lot of South Africans are German based, and there's I can't remember what it's called, but there's a song or a chant that the PHs would sing to celebrate the hunt, and it ends in, because Jaeger means hunt master, I believe.
Okay.
Jägermeister
is
means,
that right?
That's why there's the red stag on the logo.
Yeah.
Jägermeister, hunt master. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So they used to drink it to celebrate a hunt. So anyway, he put the phrase of that stuff inside it, and then we sculled it. So basically, drunk rhino horn. It didn't work as an aphrodisiac. And no, I'm not immortal.
That's what I was going to ask.
So, but I don't know. To circle back early on, I think the main reason I shot it was probably initially just to say that I had, and to start that conservation conversation based around it.
Yeah.
I did a talk at our local hunting club at their Christmas in July, and that was pretty fun. I'd put a little presentation together, and then I actually read an excerpt from my diary when I was over there. and I ended it with there's a little video of the hunt. So it was good fun to have that conversation. But they actually had people not turn up to the dinner because there was a picture of me with a rhino on the paper, on the
interesting
promotional.
Yeah.
If they came, they would have got the full story. But that was my point. There's always more to the story.
Well, that's a really good example, isn't it, about people making assumptions. No, that's excellent. You did mention that you would hunt a rhino, like flat out, like on an actual hunt.
Kill.
Is there anything Is there anything that is off the table for you that you go, I will not? Anything legal? So if it's illegal, you can rule it out for that reason. That's fine. But is there anything legal that you would not hunt?
No, there's not. The only thing I'm not allowed to hunt is an elephant. It's my wife's favourite animal.
Okay.
She reckons it's a spirit animal. So I'm pretty happy to forgo that just because of cost reasons. At some point in my life, it might become a conversation I'll have with her. But it's, no. To answer your question, everything, if like you said earlier on, if it's legal, I'm all for it. I'll give it a go.
Excellent. And then you refer to yourself as a solo eater. Is there a meal that is your favourite to eat?
Look, I probably didn't refer to myself as the solo eater. I got called that.
Well, you now refer.
Yeah. Ooh. I did one the other week that I was pretty impressed with, and I surprised myself. I actually don't like game meat. I don't love it. I shouldn't say that. I do like it. I don't love it. And a lot of people will say it's probably just because I've never eaten it the right way. But this was venison backstrap over the Dodge Barchie, I'm calling it. But it was just over the coals, and it was just super simple and really delicious. But I think if you wanted me to narrow it down to one meal, it'd be lamb chops, mashed potato, and 11-minute chocolate pudding in the microwave. And if anyone wants that recipe, I can give it to you. It's a pretty special
chocolate pudding.
Self-saucing chocolate pudding in the microwave.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty
I was going to ask if you had any secret recipes, but if you're willing to share it, that's probably not it. Do you have any secret recipes, though, like that you will pass on generation to generation that you're like, this is just so good that you need to gatekeep that?
No, I think my favourite recipes are blue cans of E and a block of dairy milk chocolate, but they're not my recipes. But I will share that knowledge with the children. There's one. We grew up with a lady, Lena was her name, was one of Mum's friends, and she had this thing called Lena's Log, and it was basically the poor man's version is the chocolate ripple biscuits stacked together and then covered in cream, and then it soaks the cream up and gets a bit soggy, and then you cut it on the angle and it looks like black stripes. That's the poor man's version. I could never really work out what her version was, but it was so much better. It was called Lena's Log. She used the ginger nut biscuits or something a little bit different.
Oh, nice.
And it was a wog dish that she had grown up cooking. And the deal was she would give me the recipe when I got married.
Okay.
I never got it.
And
she's still around and she's one of Mum's friends, but I'll have to chase Mum up.
What's her excuse?
I don't know. I don't know whether I did get it. I just never did anything with it. I feel like I would have done something with it, but it was the deal. She said, I'll give it to you when you get married. I didn't invite her, so maybe that was why. But she's one of Mum's friends.
Yeah, it was going to be her wedding gift. And then you didn't invite her.
No, you weren't invited.
Delicious. Oh, very good.
You know what my anti-food is? I told you that tonight on the flip side.
Oh, yes, capsicum, you did say.
Yeah,
and chili. Yes.
Stay away from capsicum. There's got to be a sign on my farm gate saying if you enter with capsicum, just stay on the other side.
Is that the ultimate enemy for you? Is there anything else that registers? Like that's the go-to?
In that family. I mean, the old cilantro.
Will you eat coriander?
Coriander. I don't mind it. I wouldn't add it, but I'll have it if it's in a pork roll.
Yeah.
No, capsicum is the devil's food. And
how interesting.
The interesting comment that people say is, you can't taste it, just pick it off. And my standard combat is, well, if you can't taste it, don't put it on. Like,
I think it's definitely got a taste, but
it definitely has a taste.
Yeah. No. If you had to, if there was chicken, pork, lamb, beef, one had to go, you could never eat it again, what would you choose? Which would you eliminate?
Pork.
Yeah. See, I thought that too, but then I was like, but bacon. Like the pig has to, no, bacon can't go.
I love bacon, but yeah, I remember that Simpsons episode where Homer's like, Oh, Lisa was. Are you a Simpsons fan? Did you grow up watching it?
Yeah.
Lisa
like
was
the
listing all these
magical
things.
animal.
Yeah. Ham, bacon, sausages. He's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, right, Lisa, like from some magical animal. Yeah,
Yes.
pig.
Yeah.
But no, I think lamb is my favorite of the meats. I'm pretty
Lamb is
reluctant to
delicious.
order a steak when I'm out in public because I can cook a pretty good steak. I tend
absolutely.
to, if I'm at a pub or a restaurant, I'll order something. I don't normally cook pasta or linguinis and things like that. But if one has to go, get some pork on your fork and fork off.
Yeah, fair enough. Excellent. So I'm looking at the time, it's approaching an hour. Is there sort of generally where you would say things like, this has been excellent, Dodge. Thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you this evening, and it's an honour to have you here.
On my own show, I appreciate that.
On your own show. Any, finishing remarks, anything that you feel has been missed or you want to circle back round to?
No, not particularly. I appreciate you coming on and having me as your guest.
You're very welcome.
It's just a bit of fun. I said to you before that, like when I was doing Endless with Matt, we had really good banter and it worked really well together. And we got into the nitty gritty of each other's stories on some of the episodes where there wasn't a guest.
Yeah.
But when I went out and did my own, a few people have said, and I agree with them, that there's not that banter when I have guests on because I'm meeting them for the first time, or you're talking about a topic, but you're not digging into each other and having a bit of fun, like I normally had done. I said to someone today, was it Julian I was talking about? I said, I love throwing matches from the side and just watching them, but you can't do that when you're the own host.
No.
So it's, I know tonight was a good way to share some of my stories, and hopefully the listeners get to know a bit more about me. It's hard to interview people and then talk about yourself because one thing I love to do on this thing is just ask a question and then let them talk. That's what I've got them on for.
Goes. Yeah.
Let the guests
how many
get
tangents you can go on.
For the people that don't understand, I don't write down any notes. I don't really do much research on purpose because I just tell the guests, this is not an interview, this is a conversation. Just have a chat and we'll see where it flows. And if you say something like you did tonight, well, I did tonight, but your example was, you would ask a question based on what I just said. But if I had something written, I would miss that.
Yes.
And I'd be always looking at the next question. When can I start the next question?
Yeah.
So I really try and focus on just letting the guest speak for himself, basically. And then I formulate questions based on what I think listeners are trying to formulate themselves while they're listening to that answer.
Yes. What would someone be pondering right now hearing this content? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. With that in mind, if anyone does have questions on the podcast page or tab on my website, accuratehunts.com/podcast, there's a section where you can actually post a question.
Excellent.
And if anyone has a question for a guest that's been on or for me or anything like that, you can actually post it on there. And I'm going to release it soon, but what I want to do is if anyone gets a question on air, so we do get questions sent in and sometimes they go on air, they will get a hat. I'll send them an Accurate Hunts hat, which I don't have on me to show you what they look like. No, I don't. And then what I want to do is either the most popular or the best question at the end of the year will win a hunt with me. So
that's a great prize.
A reasonably large prize. It's just a good way for listeners listen and they send me messages, but send them to the page so that I can ask them on air or whatnot.
That's particularly great because so often people have questions that other people would benefit from hearing the answer to as well. So that's one of the things I absolutely love about hunting is the community and people asking questions and sharing of their knowledge. So that's a really nice way to incentivize that kind of participation.
That's what I think too. And I say this to my guests, like I've got nothing to give you guys as thanks for coming on, really. So, same with the listeners. I appreciate them listening, but I have, other than providing them this content and something to listen to, I have no real way of saying thanks. So that's an option for them to jump on and ask a question, but then go in the draw to win something a bit special that That's me being in my position. Like giving away hunts is something that's a little bit easy for me to do than others, but it is good fun, and I just love meeting new people, and I thought that'd be a fun way to do it.
I think that's excellent. Well, you heard it here, folks. Get online. Ask some questions on the page. Win yourself a hat or a hunt. How good.
There you go. A hat or a hunt. Yeah. No worries. Well,
yeah, awesome.
Thanks for jumping on, Cass. I appreciate your time. And
thank you for having me.
What's your sign-off going to be? What's your sign-off going to be?
Oh, stay classy, San Diego.
Could tell your favourite movie is. Well, 60% of the time, that works every time.
Yeah.
Until next time. See you guys.
Yeah.